your first question about, you are right. We need people coming from the religious knowledge, or ulama al-nusus, the scholars of the text, and the people who are involved in the...
Just repeat the question again.
Yeah.
I've just got another message saying what the question is. Sorry.
They will understand my answer. Anyway, the people, when we are bringing together the scholars and trying to come with a better understanding between the scholars of the text and the practitioners and the scholars of the context, they need to have the same, at least philosophical concern or background in a way, or reference. We have been dealing with this when I was starting this whole process of bringing them together. And my point on this is the following. For people coming from the text, they have it as something which is part of the old training, is the ethical concern we need. Even though, as I said, the big picture or the overall picture is not there. All the people that we are getting from the different fields, the different disciplines, there is one condition, without which we cannot do anything. They have an ethical concern. So they are questioning what is good and what is bad in what they are doing. Whatever is their background. Because I saw people being much more caring about the ethical side of their practice or their profession than Muslims in this. And we have, unfortunately, so many Muslims that are playing with al-hiyal, tricks, in which way we can play with. That's the problem. So the ethical is the starting point. Now, within the discussion, it may appear that the ethical priorities are not the same, but this is good for the discussion. Because it helps you, and this is exactly what I understand, لِتَعَارَفُوا, is that in which way, by knowing the priority of others, you understand your own, why it is put at the level. And I can tell you something, at the European level, when I was in the European Committee of Ethics, the people with whom I was the closest in many of the discussions are the Jewish representatives and some atheists, in the way they were putting this moral rationality. Not always with, for example, the discussion about life with the Christian tradition. We are not, with contraception and all this, we were not sharing the same thing. But on the other side, it was very interesting, the legal framework, but it's very legal. Once again, the problem is that to avoid this technically. But what you are saying, it's very true. So you cannot just come and bring people that are expert in their field if they don't have. So you need to find in sciences people who have both expertise and moral concern or ethical concern. It's the starting point. But what I'm saying, not only Muslims, because what some are bringing into the discussion is very interesting, very, very interesting in many ways. The way it was understood, once again, this was a discussion about muda'afa, that some were understanding riba, and this is a discussion. So the consensus, almost the consensus, which was discussed by some about riba, it's bil ijma'. The understanding is when there is not a good that is used, that money is creating money through speculation or through the fact that there is no object or good that you are taking, buying and selling, which is when the means, the money, is creating or producing the money itself. So this was also a structure that you have in their understanding. Now, you have now people, Muhammad Abdu was one of the leading scholars, and now you have Al-Juda saying, no, a riba is not exactly interest or usury. And in fact, in both understanding, it's the money producing the money, which is not the mediation of the good that you have, which is important. And even in the alternative adaptational ijtihad that we have, when, for example, you are buying a car and you are asking leasing, for example, you have to ask if the company is connected to the buyer. So these are adjustments that are more technical than the very essence of it. Can we have a system, or can we, is it possible, for an Islamic term, that to have a system which the money is producing the money through finance or through the economic system? So riba was understood as this first. This is the very essence of it. But now you have technical definitions that could be different. And this is why, for example, Judea is saying that what we have with the banks today is not interest. It's not exactly the same way it was understood. But if you come to the deep understanding of why al-illat al-hurm, which is the raison d'être of what it was prohibited, is what? Is very much to do with be careful that the means is serving a specific goal, and the means is not the goal of everything. That is all about your money. Be it the double or be it just a small amount of profit. Because what Muhammad Abdu was saying is that he was putting with a percentage. Under a certain percentage is not a riba, beyond. I said, no, this is the philosophy of it. It's the very principle which is problematic. And when it was said about Abu Hanifa, his position on this, there are interpretations, but mainly the way he was specific in the economic discussion was also mainly about, is it possible sometimes to use it? And he was saying, in Dar al-Harb, it's possible when you deal with, in the words of the time, non-Muslim, in a clear agreement and transparency without corruption, because you are in a situation where you are not a majority, we are in a minority, to use and to go through riba in this very specific situation, when you are not in the Muslim majority countries. So when you are in Dar al-Harb. In Dar al-Harb, you can use the riba and interest based on a clear contract with your partner in the transaction. What he say. And this was the starting point of the discussion about could we go for mortgage in the West when it comes to getting your family, your house. And some were saying it's possible. In fact, the European Council is saying it's possible to protect your good, and the Hanafi had this fatwa much before. In fact, this was set in South Africa. And you know that the South African Muslims are wealthy and well established in economic in the economic way in South Africa because of this, because of the fatwa that they got, that they can keep and they can use, because they are not in a Muslim majority countries. So these were ulama coming from India saying this. The problem is that the European Council ended up saying, we are not in Dar al-Harb. And still we are not in Dar al-Harb, but still we can. But once again, it doesn't work. The global economy now has much more impact on people who are living in poor country than in here. So how is it that you are saying to British Muslims, you know what, you can use mortgage, use interest to get your house, because it's not really an Islamic country, and you go to Morocco or to Egypt or to Pakistan saying you can't do this, while the people there are much more victims of the whole economic system than us here. So we are more privileged than them, but we are not in a Muslim majority country. Nonsense. That is not understanding how economy works. It's the old nation state with a national economic system, which is no longer the situation now. To the point that when Qardawi said this in Morocco, he was trying to open up by saying you can, because of necessity, because this is also something which is just unbelievable. The number of times you hear in any fatwa, haja, darura, so it's the necessity, it's an imperative, that it's almost everything is possible. because we are under pressure. So this is the way I was talking about this adaptational thing. So now, what you are saying about shorter, you know, I don't want you to get my point or what I'm trying to say as dismissing everything which is done. It's true that you have to work at that level, the individual and the collective, short and long term. My take on this is that this approach could justify sometime that at the personal level, as a first step, you go in one direction, but with one condition, is once again to question the final goal of the whole process. My problem with, for example, economic finance and Islamic economy, Islamic finance, is the first step seems to be the final goal of success, is the measurement is we are doing as good as them. I say, I'm sorry, that's not the point. So translating a first step of reform towards a first step of adaptation, that's problematic. This is why I have a problem in all these fields. And I can tell you, having, you know, I don't know how many hours now dealing with all these scholars, short and long run, they are speaking like this very often. I say, no. It's the first step. We are good. We are on track. And you can see in their understanding in the whole thing, in fact, the first step is the final step. That there is nothing on the wrong ground which is questioning this, because really this is a sense of helplessness in the way they are dealing with the economic system, to the point that you are Islamizing capitalism. So the question is deeper than that, but I agree with first steps. For example, when I was dealing with, I wrote a foreword for the first production of Majlis al-Europe al-Ifta. They were not happy with my introduction by saying, it's good, it's the first step, when they were talking about fiqh of minority. I say, it couldn't be the final step. And they have been working now for 12 years. The great majority of the European Muslims, they don't even know what they are talking about, far from the Muslims. It's in Arabic, no one is reading. It's translated 1 or 2 volumes now, while they have 10 at least. But at the end, what was presented as a first step, it's and they are just changing words. They say, oh, it's no longer now fiqh of minorities, fiqh of citizenship. Fiqh al-muwatana. What does it mean exactly? So what I'm saying here is that this understanding long run, short run, individual and collective, and that what you are saying to somebody could be useful for him or for her, that's true, but we have to be clear on, because this is misleading. The second point that you were saying or mentioning here was about whatever is the situation. A personal fatwa is a personal fatwa, and by definition a fatwa is personal. So whatever is happening now with the means, for example, it's on internet, a fatwa was given to somebody. A fatwa is a legal opinion for one person in one situation at what time. That could be changed if the environment is changing, but this couldn't be exported to somebody else. And the scholars would be very clear on this, and even the people who are getting the fatwa. The fact is that now with what we call Sheikh Google, or I don't know who it was, recently I heard for the first time Sheikh Instagram, so I didn't know that you have another way. That's the reality. The problem is that the conditions, the requirements are lost in this. In this, even in getting fatwa from scholars who are not with us, it's wrong, Islamically speaking. We need to have people coming from here and living with our environment, not living far from this. So the fact that this is happening now is not undermining the very essence of what a fatwa is. But what I said yesterday, it's important. Be careful with this overemphasizing the role of the fatwa in our life. So, too many fatwa, and at the same time, not enough understanding of the whole question. And at the end, we have an obsession with the fatwa for the details, not understanding the whole overall problem. What I was saying, I was not saying that, where are you? Ethical. You know, I have been studying a lot, and I went to visit many projects at the grassroots level in Africa, in Latin America. And mainly when I was in Brazil, this was in the 80s, 90s, and then in Africa. What I saw at the grassroots level, and then even from here in Switzerland, I was in touch with many organizations that are promoting ethical finance, ethical investment. In many of their concerns and their projects and it's completely acceptable from an Islamic viewpoint. This is it. I would like halal finance or Islamic finance and Islamic economy to be ethical and not technical. Ethical. So there are things that are done by Muslims that are very ethical, but I would say I think that we need to learn more about ethical investment, ethical finance, and to take and to give and to see how our means, because you know when you sit with people in the economic field and some who are in the ethical finance, when you speak about them and say what are the requirements coming from Islam when it comes to a zakat, the right of the poor, when it comes to refusing speculation, they are amazed. They say, that's exactly it. So we have to implement this once again with the vision. So sometimes when you sit with our partners on this, they bring the vision and we can bring the means. And we share. This is what I meant by saying I saw so many things. In microfinance, I saw Muslims using microfinance in a very capitalistic way. What is, Muhammad Yunus, for example, it's very interesting, but you have to be critical because there is a way of dealing with it which is problematic as well. But at least there is an attempt. He's opening up something. So we need to find, but to reject everything, I don't think it's the right way of doing it. And then about, I agree with you more than, I'm sorry. I'm not using Islamic medicine. I'm not reading Islamic finance. I'm saying there is Islamic ethics in finance and in medicine. But I would understand somebody telling me, you know what, if it's as serious as you are saying, that you are questioning the paradigm, it might be that in the way we are going to put Islamic medicine, it's in fact what we are saying is that we are questioning the paradigm. That is something which is specifically Islamic. And that's true. Why I don't call it Islamic medicine? Because I think that questioning the paradigm should not be done only in Islamic terms. It's on ethical terms. So I would say Islamic ethics in medicine to be able to deal with physicians who are not Muslims or from other faiths who are going to question the paradigm. So I'm going to enter into your discussion now.
I guess the point goes back to the fact that you're specifying Islamic ethics. But the values are different to what you're creating. The values in and of themselves are not...
So make your discussion public. Let's go. That's a good question, and we will then we'll go for medicine. But this is a very important question, and I think that we have to clarify the whole thing. When it comes to values and ethics and morality, there is an Islamic ethics. There is something which is clearly coming from the Quran, was Sunnah, wal Kawn. And then what we are saying is that what is universal, for us these values are universal, for us, from where we are. But in our journey towards other religions, we acknowledge the fact that for them and for us, the only values that are going to be considered as universal are the shared universal values. Shared. So for me, they are universal, but I can understand that for you it's not. It's this intellectual empathy that you put yourself. It's what I'm talking about in the first chapter of the Quest for Meaning. Is this the universal? So this is one. Now, so we have a universal, or you have Islamic values and Islamic ethics. Now, when it comes to science, what is Islamic in the way we deal with science? Every single science is dealing with an object. And the way you are going to be fair with the object as to your way of understanding object, setting the methodology, trying to find or to discover the reality, this is Islamic per se because you are reading the world. But the way it's done by people who are not, or there are other religion, for us it is Islamic. For them it's just objective science. But for us, any objective way of dealing with the real, for us, is the only way we have to do it as Muslim. But we don't have to put Islamic everywhere. And there is a difference between qualifying the values that are giving the orientation to all the goals that should be Islamic, because they are based on the values, and accepting the means, and all the means for us are Islamic, but we are not qualifying them because they are between the source and the goal, which is Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un, and in between, this is something that we are sharing with the people. So for example, when I see people who are very, very skilled in the way they deal with their field, for me, the way they are doing it, this is why it's Islamic. To the point, for example, I have been for 7 years teaching philosophy. Teaching an object and and intellectuals and philosophers who are saying exactly the opposite of what I was thinking. So some were coming to me and say, what do you do with this? Do you influence them? Do you make da'wah? What is my da'wah? What is Islamic in what I am doing as a teacher? What I have to do, and this is coming not from me, it's a very old Islamic tradition, is then when you deal with a thought which is not yours, and you have to teach the thought, you have to present it as it is, not what you think of it. So this is what Nietzsche is saying. This is his thought. And the way the students are going to see that you are ethical is the way you teach, not what you think. And in fact, in the way you teach, it's what you think. You think that you have to be honest with the object. You have to be honest with what you are teaching. So I can teach the worst theory in a very honest way. I'm honest with rubbish. No, but get me right. This is very important. What I think is rubbish, but this is honesty. Is just this is what he thinks, and you go very far in the way you can find in what the philosophers are saying. It's exactly the same in all the fields. Now, the obsession of putting Islamic at the beginning, in the middle, everywhere, at the end, that's a colonization of inferiority complex. So this was your answer to her? You are happy?
I think you answered mine.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to be diplomatic. I agree with both of you. Okay, medicine? We have time, or yeah?
Yeah, I just want to add another question that's just
Okay.
related to medicine from online. It says, I have a question about your view or what's been discussed in CILE on whether genetic modification of embryos to remove disease or provide patient-specific organs is acceptable.
Say it again.
Whether genetic modification of embryos to remove disease or provide patient-specific organs is acceptable.
Yes, okay. Sorry?
Is this going to be a personal or a public fatwa?
What I'm going to say. I'm repeating what they said. Trying to protect myself. That's it? But we can take other questions, and I will, because this is medicine.
Other medical-related questions. Yeah, medicine, yeah?
Yeah. With regards to what you were saying about having the right to genetic medication and challenging the pharmaceutical multinational companies with regards to this, obviously, with historically the way HIV and AIDS emerged, there's a massive stigma around it, and especially amongst the Muslims. Obviously, you still hear until today people talking about it. It's punishment for a certain lifestyle, which of course is completely outdated, and especially in the case of South Africa, it doesn't apply anymore because the majority of transmissions are from mother to child. But how can we challenge that stigma that surrounds it in order to be able to get the people active? And is not also racism part of it as well, because the vast majority of people are black South Africans who are suffering from this disease?
Good question. Thank you.
Just to say, looking at the time, we're extending this a little bit like yesterday, and we'll make up for the lunchtime. So we don't want to lose the flow of discussion.
You mentioned the dilemma at the end of life, but also at the beginning of life.
Can you speak?
The dilemma with terminally ill people at the end of life. It's also at the beginning of life in neonatology, where a baby is born extremely premature. What's the obligation of a doctor? Is it to preserve life even though the baby's going to be extremely handicapped, or is it to make a decision as to the quality of life?
Okay, cool.
It's relating to performance-enhancing drugs. Recently, there's some interesting discussions around drugs that can help people study better, think more creatively, and so on. What do we do with those sorts of interesting situations?
I was not.
And it's not a personal factor.
The energy drinks.
No, not just the energy drink. There are actually other things in improving memory. Some people actually say that smoking marijuana or taking LSD creates a state of mind which allows more creativity, pointing to really wonderful inventions.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so it's just.
Some of us who are not students anymore missed something there. Yes. Can you just raise your voice? Just can't hear you very well.
In a discussion of ethical and unethical sort of objectives, like if some of the things are very unethical, but it's being done of very ethical intention, then who's going to make the decision whether it's ethical or not? Like building an airport or like a new sort of train network, maybe it will be destructive for the environment, but the people who are running the project, they have ethical motives, like providing means of transport to the people. So on one hand, it's probably unethical, but on the other hand, it's ethical. So how are we going to judge the balance?
Okay, we'll end it with that. And all the questions you've got.
Okay. So on the first one, on genetic modification, there were lots of discussions among the scholars and the committees on this. And for example, when it came to cloning or genetic modification, when it comes to therapy and therapeutic modification, this is something that was accepted by the great majority of the scholars. When the goal is about therapy and helping. The problem is, once again, if you don't get the whole picture, you are opening a door here where who is going to decide what are the limits? If you open that door, so what is always the case with the fatwa is a case per case, and we cannot give one answer for all. It has to be case per case. In some situation, the modification here could be something which is manageable, which is known and understood, and it could have an impact on health. Now, the only fact that you are in that field opening the door for genetical modification is something which is very dangerous. So, because if you say yes to the first, you are going to have to deal with the whole picture of it. But mainly the position of the scholars on this have been in terms of therapy, helping to cure. This is something which is possible if the risks are manageable and it's understood that you know exactly and the goal and the final result is under control. But the principle of it has been accepted in many ways or in many fields instead. So to remove the disease when it's under control. The other question about generic medication and what you were saying, that's completely true. The problem that we have with AIDS is the immoral qualification of the disease, and I had it, close to me in so many ways when I was in South Africa, when I was dealing with, I was in Mauritius, and they came to me and say, there is a woman who has AIDS and she wants to see something. Nobody wants to go there. She was completely isolated, and two things were there that you mentioned. The first is the moral qualification. And I was meeting with, I went there for training medical doctors in South Africa, and to keep on repeating, a patient, whatever is his or her disease, has no religion, and you have no moral judgment to make on from where it comes. And afterward I saw this, I don't know if you heard about this movie, which is based on a real story of this Egyptian woman who got AIDS through her husband who was in jail. She didn't do anything wrong, so it was not homosexuality, it was not adultery, it was not immoral. She got it in a very halal way. And she went to the TV, and she had to go for a treatment, and she didn't have the money. And there was a TV program asking the people to help in order for her to go for the treatment. And she went to the TV producer, and he told her, yes, but we have one condition, is you say from where it came. How did you get it? And she looked at him and said, no, that's none of your business. I'm sick, I have it, I don't have anything to say to anybody. She was getting it in a halal way. But the principle of having to justify why you are sick was, and she passed away out of this. She didn't get the treatment. And this story is revealing the distorted mindset of this judgmental way the Muslims are dealing with some of the diseases or some of the behaviors that we have within our society. So I would say a doctor should not ask from where, should not express moral judgment, and the only thing that you have today is to help. So you don't ask about the color, you don't ask about the origin, and you don't ask about the money, normally. Add to this the second thing, which once again, I keep on repeating, there is no way and no space for racism in Islam. But unfortunately, there is so much racism against Muslims, or among Muslims. And that's exactly it. It's the way we look at AIDS. It's, African country, African people, poor people, and dismissive, rejecting, unacceptable. So once again here, you see how the picture is big. It has to do with economics. It has to do with culture. It has to do with the sense of humanity. كلكم من آدم وكلكم من تراب. كلكم. All of you, you are from Adam, and all of you, you have the same origin. Be humble and just try to avoid racism. But we have racism in the way we deal with medicine. In the way even we avoid talking about some problems because it's as if it's not us, it's them. And with this, they deserve it because there is no morality. And it's homosexuality. So this qualification is just unacceptable. And we need to have a very clear discourse on this. As much as I was talking about the environment, when it comes to this, that's unacceptable. Unacceptable. The fact that you can't say in our community that you have it or that you are experiencing this. And in some countries, it's as if it's the worst thing that you can get. Not because you are sick, but because you are judged as an immoral person and doubtful or suspicious. That's not acceptable. And I think that this is where the medical doctor, the physicians, and the community, the Muslims, brothers and sisters, should come with a stronger take on these discussions. And this is why also we are not involved in the priority of what are the generic medications and how we have to deal with this and to promote the drugs in a way which is more with more social and justice and economic justice. Your question is a very important one. And once again, it's exactly like we have, in when it comes to genetic modification, it's all a question of probability and risks that we have in this situation. Is it possible? I don't know who asked this question. It was coming from there. So how do we have to deal? So you have to balance the risks and what is possible. In the situation where you have this information and you can have them soon, and sometimes it's coming late. For some scholars, the fact that you have to take into account many things, starting with the two ahadith, 40 days or 120 days. So some are saying up to 120 days we can go for it, which is a problem. 120 days, it's a lot. Now, this is the first assessment. Second is what do we know and what are the probability of survival, yes and no. Second, about the family and what is going to be the life of the potential child in this family, and are they going to be able to bear it and to give him at least to support. These are conditions that are, for some scholars, are very important when it comes to abortion and when it comes to which decision are we taking. So it's a case per case. But what could be yes for one is going to be no for the other, depending on so many factors. So we have to be careful. I'm saying this. In the book Radical Reform, and then I repeated this in many books, we have one statement, which is the general statement in Islam. Abortion, we are not for abortion except in one situation when the life of the mother is at risk. This is the general statement. Now, be careful. In Islam, we don't have an authority saying everything else is forbidden. For example, remember in Bosnia, where you have the scholars saying after rape, is it possible to go for it? Some scholars say no, the baby is not yours, and others say yes. And some say yes, you can, and others say yes, do it straight away if you can have an intervention the day after or straight after, because with the drug of the following day you can prevent this from. So we have 3 or 4 different opinions. Meaning that with abortion, yes, there is this general statement, which is in fact a rational, accepted. No one is celebrating abortion, saying, yes, we are happy. No. Even the people who are saying yes for abortion are saying, I know it could have an impact on my life, but I should have the right to go for it if it's a situation where there is a necessity. From an Islamic viewpoint, our way of dealing with abortion is so much case per case that you have to take all this into account, that we have to be very cautious with any legal decision saying that the nation state is forbidden for all. So I was asked once to support a movement saying, because this was a situation in Belgium, say, go and we are against abortion. Say, no, I'm not going to take that stand. What is said by the Christian tradition is not what Islam is saying. Islam is saying abortion is not good. Abortion is a case per case, but abortion is accepted only when the mother is at risk. But there are so many other situations when you have to discuss, when you have to go and you have to assess, that you cannot just say it's a complete no. I'm not taking this position, because this position is putting us in a situation where we are supporting other religious trends that are not our way of dealing with abortion. The fact that on this is something which is very important, because even in the way we are dealing with the fatwa on abortion, we have to take into account good life, final goal, what is going to happen with the family. All these things are part of what the scholars were talking about centuries ago. So why are we now coming on the defensive and say it's haram? No, don't say this, and don't say we need and I said this in Morocco. I said this in Morocco when they were talking about, abortion is haram. I say no. I'm sorry. That first is not the right word, and second, our legal Islamic tradition is not saying it's all haram. We go and we study, and we take into account all the factors. So we don't have a national legal thing prohibiting it in a way which is pushing women to go underground, because this is not going to work. So about your drugs improving creativity. No, I think that the very essence of drugs is once again, it's to help you to recover when something, but to improve and to push. And for example, there are no limits on this. So some scholars would tell you, in fact, anything that you are taking that has no impact on your lucidity, on your awareness, that's fine. I don't accept that. I think anything that you are taking to help to improve, and there is something that is needed for you, but to improve your intellectual capacity or your imagination, I think that this shouldn't be done by drugs. It should be done by training. This is also something that we don't always know which type of impact these drugs are going to have on your mind and your imagination. Because some of them are even creating a kind of addiction, to the point that when you don't take them, you need them. So it's creating something, and the risk here is huge. So I wouldn't go that way. If you need an open fatwa, no way. Last one. What you said is interesting, because this is exactly where we are. In our international conference this year, you might be able to follow the conference through, we are making it live stream. This will be the first weekend of April. This is exactly what we are studying. Conflicting values. How do you deal with this? Because this is the reality. For example, it came from what was said by Sheikh Ben Baya when he was in the United Nations. I have a great deal of respect towards him, but I cannot agree with what he said. I think it's unacceptable. When you have Joe Biden and the United States of America in front of you, you don't tell them, we go for peace and we forget about justice. We don't want to talk about justice. Because the starting point of everything, there will be no justice, there will be no peace if there is no justice. But the two values could be conflicting. When you go for peace, how do you deal with justice? Do you sometimes have to compromise on justice to get peace? And it's everywhere the same. Sometimes you are doing something with the good ethical intention and you know that the impact. So everything here is going to be a balance. You have to go to assessing the situation. So there is nothing in ethics which is black and white. Yes, there are things that are black and white. But you know this example coming from the State Department. Are you for torture or not? Do you promote torture? It's a question. No, you are against. In all case, all situation? Ah. Well, well what? Hmm? No, are you against torture in every single situation, or could you justify torture in some? You can? No, but are you promoting torture or not?
Are we allowed to question the question here?
Sorry?
Can we question the question?
You want to question the question? No, you can. How do you want to question the question?
No, I mean, you're obviously creating, I mean, it seems like there is a fallacy in a sense where, depending on the outcome, you're going to propose a scenario where it's going to seem like it might be necessary for torture. Yes?
I don't know. Let me finish my story. I'm asking. No, don't question my question before I end my story. I'm just asking you a question. Are you defending torture or not? Are you, when you think about it, before I say my story, could you imagine a situation where you condone or you accept torture? So who are saying yes? You can promote torture. No what? What does it mean? Never. And those who are saying sometimes it's good, or sometimes it's acceptable, not it's good.
Yeah, what's some people would consider some of the Islamic punishments to be torture.
No, I'm not talking about punishment. I'm talking about torturing somebody to get information. Physical torture. Always wrong? Okay, now, always wrong? Okay, now, I'm a terrorist.
I've heard this. We did this in politics. Don't know.
No, let me. I want you to. So you know, but they don't. Now I want you to answer. I know people who are going to kill, or there is a bomb in the building, and I know where are the people. I even know where is the bomb. It's going to explode. And you are gentle, but I am not responding to your gentle questions. It's going to explode in 1 hour. What do you do?
Tell people to leave the area. On the BBC, you can't torture that person.
No, but no. That's an easy answer. Now I know that the bomb is going to explode. You don't know where.
Yes, but what if they misdirect you? What if the answer they give you is it's in East London?
No. I know where it is. You don't. It's in 1 hour. It's going to explode. So you can't call anybody. What do? Can you torture me to know where it is?
No. You could still lie.
Sorry?
You could still lie.
No, but yes, but of course. But on the torture, it depends where. So my question is, possible or not? Sorry? Sorry? That I am not what? Sorry. What? No. Again now. You should study legal tradition, the tricks and the hiyal, just to try to avoid my question. I know. I'm going to take the Egyptian way. بس بقى. I know. So what do you do with me? What do you do with me? I know. and you know, and it's certain you know that I know.
We should use all the means to get the information.
Sorry?
We should use all the means to get the
So you torture me. Sorry?
I need to save a lot of people's lives, so
That's it. So it's a probability. Just let us, you know that I know. They are going to die. 3,000 people on my own. I'm nice, I'm not going to speak. Now, who in this room is saying you can't torture? No, you can. Just raise your hand, please. So, yes. Who in this room is saying never, ever? So you are.
Ramadan, can we ask those people what if their children were in that building?
Oh, now you are putting the emotion on me. No, you don't know where it's going to know. It's going to be. You can't know. You know where. You don't know where your father is.
That the kids come to the school and your kid goes to that school and you need to pass for the bomb.
So, stop it here. Just that's a point where sometimes can you use unethical means for an ethical goal? The ethical goal is your life is less than there, so I can do it to you because I'm saving. Some scholars and some philosophers would say never. And some others say you can't say that you are against torture. In this situation, it will be irrational and unjust for all the people who are going to die not to do it on one to save thousands. So that's a discussion where in the legal field, in ethical field, it's all a question of balancing and trying to find the position. There is no final answer. Even among scholars, the priority is going to be could be determined in a different way. For example, the discussion that we had in France about the headscarf. For example, it's ethical to get your education. You are facing an ethical law telling you you don't go to school. At the end, if you want to get the knowledge, which is a priority, do you go to the school without the headscarf or you follow the Islamic principles by not going? Some scholars say never. Don't remove the headscarf. And others saying, no. School is much more important than the headscarf for this very specific period of time. So you go to school and then you put the headscarf afterward. It's balancing the whole thing. It's ethical and legal at the same time. But your question is very important because this is where you show that it's complex.